Welcome back to our channel. The world stage has seen a whirlwind of activity, and today we delve into some pivotal economic and political shifts impacting global dynamics. From trade policy repercussions to groundbreaking technological advancements, a lot is unfolding. We encourage you to subscribe to our channel and hit the like button. Your support is crucial for us to continue bringing you in-depth analysis. Also, let us know where you're watching from in the comments below. The notion that a 25% tariff could rescue the U.S. economy was held by Trump. However, the reality unfolded quite differently, resembling more of an economic shockwave. Major corporations like John Deere and Ford began relocating their production facilities outside the United States. Concurrently, American consumers faced escalating prices for vehicles, household necessities, and various equipment, indicating a significant financial strain. Consider the well-known John Deere slogan, "Nothing runs like a deer." Ironically, the company itself seemed to be running, specifically towards Mexico. Reports confirmed John Deere was shifting part of its production operations from Iowa southward across the border. This decision wasn't isolated. News outlets highlighted that John Deere initiated a substantial change in its manufacturing strategy for farming equipment, a move resulting in hundreds of job losses within the U.S. Please stay tuned through the entire video, as we'll be summarizing the key takeaways and offering concluding thoughts at the end. John Deere, a name deeply embedded in the fabric of American agriculture and recognized as one of its most iconic brands, made the strategic decision to transfer a segment of its manufacturing activities from its long-standing base in Iowa to Mexico. This relocation sent ripples through the agricultural sector, but its implications extended far beyond, setting off a cascade of significant consequences for the broader U.S. economy. The move highlighted the complex challenges facing domestic manufacturing, including rising operational costs and the pressures of global competition. The departure of such a symbolic company underscored a potential trend of industrial migration, raising concerns about job security and economic stability within the nation. This strategic shift by John Deere served as a potent indicator of the evolving landscape of global production and the difficult choices companies face in maintaining competitiveness. In response to these corporate decisions, the Trump administration retaliated with strong pronouncements, threatening steep tariffs reaching as high as 200% on goods imported from companies, including John Deere and Ford, that moved production elsewhere. The explicit goal was to exert pressure on these corporations, compelling them to reconsider their strategies and bring manufacturing operations back to American soil. Initially, these tariff threats appeared formidable, potentially altering the economic calculus for companies considering offshore production. They were presented as a powerful tool to enforce the America First agenda and safeguard domestic jobs. However, the actual outcomes diverged significantly from these expectations, revealing the complexities and often unpredictable nature of international trade disputes and protectionist policies. The results were far from what was anticipated. Instead of incentivizing companies like John Deere to return their operations to America, the implemented policies paradoxically triggered a surge in the prices of essential goods. The cost of automobiles, household appliances, and everyday items skyrocketed, placing a heavier burden on American consumers. Simultaneously, the intricate network of global supply chains started to fray under the strain of tariffs and retaliatory actions. U.S. factories found themselves struggling to source necessary spare parts, a difficulty that exacerbated existing tensions and highlighted the interconnectedness of the modern global economy. The policy, intended to protect and revive domestic industry, inadvertently contributed to inflationary pressures and logistical nightmares, complicating the economic environment further. Amidst this challenging economic climate, some of the nation's largest corporations, notably Ford and John Deere, found themselves in a position where passively waiting for the consequences of trade policies was not a viable option. Faced with escalating operational costs and uncertain market conditions within the U.S., they made the strategic decision to migrate significant portions of their production overseas. This move was framed as essential for their long-term survival and competitiveness. John Deere, for instance, expanded its manufacturing footprint into Brazil and India, two nations offering substantially lower production costs compared to the United States. This shift allowed them to mitigate the financial pressures experienced domestically while tapping into new and growing international markets, ensuring their continued presence on the global stage. Ford, demonstrating similar resolve, embarked on a substantial investment initiative, channeling $1 billion into establishing electric vehicle production facilities in Mexico and Vietnam. These locations were chosen strategically due to their significantly lower labor and production costs relative to the United States. By diversifying its manufacturing base to these more cost-effective regions, Ford aimed to bolster its position in the burgeoning electric vehicle market, while navigating the economic headwinds created by tariff policies and rising domestic expenses. This substantial overseas investment signaled a clear strategic pivot, reflecting the company's adaptation to the changing global economic landscape and its pursuit of sustainable growth beyond U.S. borders. The move wasn't merely about cost-cutting. It represented a long-term vision for Ford's role in the future of automotive technology and global markets, and the ripple effects didn't cease there. Other titans of American industry, including General Motors and Caterpillar, followed suit, initiating shifts of their own operations to overseas locations. This trend was driven by a fundamental need to safeguard their profitability against the backdrop of escalating domestic production costs and the uncertainties introduced by trade disputes. These companies could no longer sustain the expense of operating high-cost factories within the U.S. without jeopardizing their financial health, especially as production costs continued their upward trajectory. This collective migration of major manufacturers represented more than just individual corporate decisions. It signified a profound adjustment in business strategy across key sectors of the American economy. It also served as a powerful, albeit concerning, message about the current realities and challenges confronting U.S. manufacturing, highlighting the difficult balance between domestic production and global competitiveness. The pressure on business costs within the United States had simply become too intense to maintain domestic production levels without incurring significant financial risk. These widespread changes in manufacturing location don't solely impact corporate executives or institutional investors. The brunt of the consequences falls squarely on American workers. The labor community, particularly in the Midwest, a region historically anchored by the factories of industrial giants like Ford and John Deere, is now confronting an economic downturn of unprecedented severity. Factories are closing their doors, leading to mass layoffs that leave countless workers and their families in precarious situations. Many find themselves grappling with uncertainty, unsure how to maintain their livelihoods as the jobs they once took pride in, working for major American corporations, are replaced by overseas production. This shift leaves them with diminished opportunities for growth and stability within their own communities. The narrative these workers once believed in, the Made in America dream that Trump had pledged to revitalize, has increasingly felt like a fading illusion. The promise of a robust manufacturing comeback has, for many, turned into disappointment as economic realities diverge from political rhetoric. Workers now confront not only the immediate risk of losing their jobs, but also an uncertain future where new, comparable job opportunities within their industries are becoming increasingly scarce. The very individuals who were meant to be the beneficiaries of protectionist policies find themselves bearing the heaviest costs, facing diminished prospects and a growing sense of economic insecurity. These workers, once the backbone of major companies, are now left grappling with disappointment and a palpable fear for what the future holds. Trump's tariff strategies were initially promoted with the expectation of rejuvenating U.S. manufacturing. However, the actual outcomes have painted a starkly different picture. Instead of luring companies back to American shores, these policies inadvertently pushed major corporations like Ford and John Deere to become pioneers in shifting production overseas. Why this unexpected result? Because in the intricate web of today's globalized world, the cost of manufacturing within the United States has escalated to a point where it becomes prohibitively expensive for many companies to sustain operations domestically without compromising their competitiveness. While Trump's tariffs might have offered short-term, localized benefits for some workers or specific sectors, The broader, long-term effect appears to be counterproductive to the goal of strengthening overall domestic manufacturing. These companies ultimately prioritized survival and global competitiveness over patriotic allegiance, a decision driven by stark economic realities. Those individuals and communities who placed their confidence in Trump's promise of a powerful manufacturing resurgence are now grappling with significant repercussions. They face soaring prices for consumer goods, diminished job opportunities as factories relocate or scale back, and a profound sense of disappointment stemming from a dream that seems increasingly shattered. The economic landscape is shifting, and the policies intended to protect have, in many cases, exacerbated the challenges. Can China's actions potentially push the U.S. economy into a deeper crisis through mechanisms like tariffs, reductions in U.S. Treasury holdings, and the resulting consumer struggles? China's retaliatory 125% tariff and the associated supply chain disruptions are undeniably causing severe consequences. Car prices are reported to rise by $5,000 to $7,000 due to these factors. Inflationary pressures surge, and major companies are forced to halt or reconsider operations. China's imposition of tariffs is creating significant challenges for companies like Tesla and the broader U.S. auto industry. China has levied a 125% tariff on various U.S. products, encompassing cars, machinery, and crucial semiconductor parts. As a direct consequence, prominent companies such as Tesla have been compelled to suspend shipments to China. Within a mere 2-day period following such actions, Tesla's market valuation plummeted by over $2 billion, a figure that underscores the significant financial impact of these trade tensions and cannot be easily dismissed. Tesla's electric vehicle prices have consequently risen by $5,000 to $7,000, rendering electric car ownership a more distant prospect, particularly for consumers operating within limited budgets. This elevated cost not only curtails accessibility to electric vehicles, but also imposes additional financial pressure on individuals and families needing loans to purchase vehicles, thereby making it more challenging than ever for many Americans to afford an electric car. China is also undertaking another significant maneuver by reducing its holdings of U.S. Treasury securities, bringing them down to a 15-year low of just $668 billion. Concurrently, China is strategically shifting towards utilizing the Chinese yuan and the euro for international transactions, moving away from reliance on the U.S. dollar. This trend will not only influence the value of the U.S. dollar, but could also introduce major volatility into global financial markets. The weakening of the U.S. dollar might drive up the prices of imported goods, potentially leading to further inflation down the line and increasing consumer costs. Additionally, as the U.S. dollar potentially loses value, loans denominated in USD become relatively more expensive to repay, adding yet another layer of pressure on businesses and consumers alike. This situation could precipitate a challenging economic cycle on a global scale. The repercussions extend beyond tariffs and currency shifts. Severe supply chain disruptions are emerging as a major concern. Car manufacturers are struggling to secure an adequate supply of parts, resulting in delayed deliveries. Thousands of cars cannot be delivered to consumers on schedule, creating significant difficulties. Can you imagine the scenario where the price of a new car surpasses $50,000, while concurrently, used car prices have surged to $32,000? For many, especially those with constrained budgets, owning a car is transforming into a distant dream. Furthermore, maintenance costs have reportedly doubled, ranging from $50 to $100, primarily due to shortages of spare parts. The weakening U.S. dollar exacerbates this by making imported goods, including essential car parts, more expensive. This not only inflates car prices, but also boosts the cost of other consumer goods, causing overall living expenses to rise substantially. The impact is not confined to economic indicators. It's deeply affecting the daily lives of American consumers. Escalating car prices, prolonged delivery waits, and increased maintenance expenses are just a few tangible examples of the hardships encountered in the current economic climate. Rising inflation is making living costs significantly more expensive. Weak consumer sentiment might compel individuals and families to tighten their belts, saving more and spending less. Can people effectively navigate this challenging period when the economic foundations feel increasingly unstable? These fluctuations are profoundly impacting the everyday realities of Americans, from their purchasing power in stores to their long-term financial planning. Let's consider the strategic move by Honda, which seems to be navigating against the prevailing currents. In just a matter of minutes, one can refuel their vehicle, drive over 430 kilometers, without emissions or lengthy charging times. The Honda CR-V EFCEV is quietly reshaping the automotive landscape. Developed through a collaboration between industrial giants Honda and General Motors, this model integrates a 17.7 kilowatt-hour rechargeable battery, enabling 29 miles of electric driving, alongside a hydrogen fuel cell system, providing a total range nearing 435 kilometers. Critically, refueling takes merely 3 to 5 minutes. This sport utility vehicle circumvents the need for charging and dependence on the electrical grid, offering a strategic edge, particularly as numerous U.S. states grapple with grid overload issues. Hydrogen has long been viewed as a vital component in diversifying energy sources and lessening reliance on fossil fuels across nations. The advantage? No necessity for oil imports, no requirement for a vast global electric vehicle charging infrastructure. Furthermore, when hydrogen is generated using renewable energy sources, it qualifies as green hydrogen, a fuel source virtually free from geopolitical cost implications. Currently, however, only about 1% of global hydrogen production is green. The majority is gray hydrogen, derived from natural gas, which still releases greenhouse gases. This makes the hydrogen car narrative not just about technological innovation, but intrinsically linked to energy policy and national investment strategies. California, Japan, China, and the European Union have all established targets to significantly expand their hydrogen fueling networks, aiming for hundreds of stations by 2030. Should hydrogen vehicles gain widespread adoption, it could represent a transformative shift, benefiting not only the environment, but also enhancing national energy independence. In an era where technology often introduces complexity, the simplicity offered by hydrogen fuel cell vehicles might represent a true luxury. Consumers aren't required to understand lithium supply chains or the intricacies of national power grids. Their primary concerns remain convenience, speed, and cost. The CR-V EFCEV delivers on these fronts quietly yet effectively. A 5-minute refuel yields a range of nearly 435 kilometers, eliminating charging clocks, battery degradation concerns, and the need for battery replacement after a few years. Notably, Honda provides $15,000 worth of fuel for the initial 3 years of ownership. There's no flashy, complex technology or multitude of apps needed to connect everything. Simply drive, refuel, and continue the journey. In conclusion, the landscape shaped by Trump's tariff policies reveals a complex interplay of intended consequences and unforeseen repercussions. While aimed at bolstering domestic manufacturing and protecting American workers, the tariffs have led to significant economic shifts, including major companies like John Deere and Ford moving production overseas to remain competitive amidst rising costs. This migration, coupled with retaliatory measures from nations like China, has resulted in higher consumer prices, supply chain disruptions, and job losses in the very sectors the policies sought to protect. The Made in America dream has faced challenges, leaving workers and small businesses in vulnerable positions. Simultaneously, global economic dynamics are evolving, with countries like China reducing reliance on the US dollar and investing heavily in alternative technologies like electric vehicles, potentially altering the global trade and financial systems. Innovations like Honda's hydrogen fuel cell vehicle further illustrate the push towards energy independence and technological disruption, offering alternatives that bypass traditional infrastructure constraints. Ultimately, American consumers bear the brunt of these changes through increased costs and economic uncertainty. The effectiveness of protectionist policies remains debatable, highlighting the intricate balance between national interests and the realities of a deeply interconnected global economy. The path forward requires careful consideration of trade policies, investment in domestic capabilities, and adaptation to both technological advancements and shifting geopolitical tides. Thank you for joining us on the channel today.